Today we will look at another tragic case that will shock you. Today's story serves as a poignant reminder of life's fragility and the devastating impact of senseless actions. Emily Longley was born on February 22, 1994, in a London hospital. She was the first child in the young family of Mark and Caroline Longley. Mark's friends teased him about becoming a father soon. At 26, he felt utterly unprepared for parenthood. He was present at the birth, and when the nurse cleaned the newborn and handed her to him, he tenderly held her in his arms. Her tiny head rested in his palms, and her legs barely reached his elbow. The girl opened her eyes and gazed at her dad. In that moment, Mark knew fatherhood wouldn't be a problem for him. A few years later, the Longley family welcomed a second daughter, Hannah. The two blonde sisters adored each other and were a joy for their father. He was confident that keeping the children warm and safe would let them know how much he loved them. The girls grew up surrounded by their parents' unconditional love. They had an example of prosperity and happiness right before their eyes. Mark Longley worked as a journalist for a local newspaper, while Caroline was a teacher. The girls had a promising future ahead, the kind every parent wishes for their children. 10 years later, Emily and Hannah Longley's world was turned upside down when their parents made the momentous decision to move from their hometown of Bournemouth to the scenic landscapes of New Zealand. This was a massive change for everyone, as relocating to another country was a significant step. This challenging decision was made for Emily's health, following the doctor's advice that she needed a change in climate. The Longley family traveled halfway around the world, hoping for a better life for their daughters, and so it was. New Zealand's climate is varied due to its landscape. Most regions of New Zealand have a temperate maritime climate characterized by 4 distinct seasons. Winters here are relatively mild, and summers are comparatively cool. The Pacific Ocean and mountain ranges are major contributing factors. The nature and air were perfect for the family from England. A new chapter began in the lives of the Longleys and their daughters. Emily attended a prestigious private school, and for a while, life went on quietly until she was metaphorically stabbed in the back by former classmates. Her friend, Sarah Leader Blanche, caused a stir at school by revealing that Emily had fallen in with the wrong crowd and was associated with banned substances. Sarah gave an interview to the school newspaper detailing a party at Emily's house. After overcoming initial disappointments and betrayals, at the end of 2010, Emily decided to return to England to continue her education. She moved in with her grandparents, Ronald and Zoe Longley, in a large detached cottage near the promenade in Southbourne, close to Bournemouth, and enrolled in a British college, hoping it would be a fresh start for her life. The decision bore fruit. Emily, who had struggled in school, transitioned to a calmer student life and thrived. Emily made strides, allowing her to balance her studies at Brockenhurst College in Hampshire with a job at the Topshop clothing store. At 16, Emily Longley was a vibrant, cheerful, and highly ambitious young woman with striking blonde beauty. Her radiant appearance quickly led to early successes in the modeling industry, while her captivating charm and irresistible charisma made her stand out in her community. In December 2010, at a party, Emily met 19-year-old Elliot Vince Turner. Elliot was the only son of a wealthy and successful jeweler, Lee Turner. He worked at his father's jewelry store in Bournemouth and lived in his family's home in Queen's Park, an affluent area of Bournemouth. He was part of a group known as The Firm, made up of affluent young men actively socializing in local bars and clubs in Bournemouth and Poole. Elliot Turner, who drew the attention of many women, seemed almost obsessed with them. Nonetheless, the two quickly became a couple. Elliot was incredibly devoted to his girlfriend, who had started modeling and earning her first income. She began to attract the attention of many men. Elliot's jealousy towards Emily was intense. Within 4 months, their relationship had turned into a battleground of constant arguments and mutual grievances. Amidst this tumultuous relationship marked by Elliot's worrying behavior and endless jealousy, emotional abuse became the norm. If he disapproved of her attire, he'd accuse her of dressing like a call girl. He hacked into her Facebook account to monitor her activities and conversations. He also showed up unannounced when she wasn't around. He used his strength and anger to intimidate Emily. Once, she wrote him a note saying, "Stop being so aggressive." However, each incident was followed by remorse and apologies, only for the cycle to repeat. Elliot eventually crossed the line from verbal threats to physical actions. He grabbed her by the throat and punched her in public on multiple occasions. He then justified his actions by blaming Emily for his uncontrollable outbursts of emotion. After continuous arguments and fights, Emily began to fear for her life. She took a break and went on a holiday to her parents in New Zealand. This was the Longley family's best Easter holiday ever. Parents, Hannah, and Emily hung out just like old times. They walked a lot, laughed, and spent a great deal of time together, as if sensing an imminent farewell. When saying goodbye, her father hugged her tightly. She promised to return in September for the Rugby World Cup. Already on the airplane, she wrote her father a message. "It was so good to see you. I love you." They had shared a special bond between father and daughter since her birth. That was the last time the family saw Emily alive. She returned to the UK, intending to end her relationship with Elliot. This happened, but tragically at the cost of a promising young woman's life. Elliot met his girlfriend not with flowers, but with a new batch of accusations and quarrels. Before Emily returned from New Zealand, Elliot discovered pictures of Emily with two shirtless young men on social media. Furious with jealousy, he invited her to spend the night at his house. Despite the disagreement, Emily agreed to return to Elliot's family home to discuss their problems, comforted by the presence of Lee and Anita, Elliot's parents. Upon her arrival at the house, a barrage of jealousy and insults descended upon her. The young couple did a lot of yelling and arguing. Half an hour of yelling was followed by silence. On the morning of May 7, 2011, emergency services received a call that 17-year-old Emily Longley was found unconscious in bed.
Just tell me what's happened there, the main reason for the call.
What it is, my son's friend is staying with us. This morning, I tried to wake both of them up, but the girl didn't wake up. We tried to wake her up. I don't know what it is.
I need you to pull back the duvet for me and just look to see if you can see any signs of breathing.
I tried to hold the pulse.
No, I need you to put your face next to her mouth. Can you feel any breath? Can you see her chest going up and down?
No.
Nothing. What colour is she?
What colour is she?
Yeah, what colour is she? She's blue. Is she red?
Is she red? My husband is having a look now. Hang on.
Anita Turner called after discovering the girl in her son's room. Rescuers who arrived on the scene were only able to state her death. Neighbors saw Turner sitting in the ambulance with his head in his hands. After the girl's death, Elliot Turner was arrested immediately, but was later released on bail pending an investigation. The investigation began after the tragic incident. Turner Jr., haunted by guilt, wrote a confession. His parents, determined not to lose their only son, deliberately withheld crucial evidence, thus delaying the investigation. 51-year-old Anita Turner and 53-year-old Lee Turner removed a coat their son wore on the night of the incident from their house, retrieved the confession letter from its pocket, and doused it with bleach to destroy vital evidence. During the investigation, a decision was made to secretly plant listening devices in the expansive Turner family home. From May 18 to June 14, police made a series of recordings inside the Turner residence. After obtaining evidence of a family discussion about fabricating evidence and concerns about lying to the police seized the household computers to search for further evidence. And they found it. A review of the browser search history revealed searches for death by strangulation and how to avoid a murder charge. In July, all 3 family members were arrested and charged with involvement in the incident and intentionally concealing evidence. Elliot Turner denied his involvement, blaming Emily for his troubles. During a forensic reconstruction of the incident, it was determined that a struggle had ensued between Elliot and Emily on that fateful day. Elliot used force in an attempt to subdue her, pressing her face down into the bed with a pillow. He then discarded the pillow and continued to strangle her with his hands. When she fell silent, he coldly stood up and left the room. Pathologists examining Emily's body found injuries consistent with strangulation. Elliot had scratches on his arm, and Emily's fingertips bore his DNA, indicating a struggle between them. The trial revealed that Elliot's behavior towards Emily was characterized by threats, aggression, violence, control, and possessiveness. These alarming traits escalated, and on a fateful night in May 2011, a heated argument erupted between the couple over Emily's choice of outfit and her photos with unknown men. The wealthy family, who couldn't afford to lose their son and tarnish their reputation, hired lawyers who fervently defended Elliot. The defense attempted to downplay the tormentor role in the young woman's demise, suggesting she might have used drugs. However, the Dorset police appointed an independent toxicological examination, which found no drugs or other banned substances in the victim's bloodstream. The affluent jeweler and his wife, who disposed of evidence to help cover up how their jealous son ended the life of the aspiring New Zealand model Emily Longley, faced justice. At 20 years old, Elliot Turner was found guilty by a jury at Winchester Crown Court in May of ending 17-year-old Emily's life in his bed after a bout of jealous rage. In sentencing, Judge Dobbs stated that he intimidated, stalked, threatened, and assaulted Emily to control her as his trophy girlfriend. The judge also advised Elliot to abandon thoughts of champagne, Bentleys, and girls as he sentenced him to life imprisonment, stating he must serve at least 16 years before being eligible for parole. His parents, Lee, 54, and Anita, 51, were also sentenced at the same court after being found guilty of obstructing justice by concealing evidence. They concealed the crime by destroying their son's confession letter and removing crucial evidence following the incident in their Bournemouth home. Their son was also sentenced to 9 months in prison for obstructing justice by hiding evidence. The prosecution argued that Turner used a pillow to suffocate Emily and then strangled her after she returned to his home to discuss their situation following a fierce argument that night. Emily's father, Mark Longley, branded Elliot Turner evil and expressed his hope that Turner would suffer every day in prison. Elliot Turner was found guilty of ending her life in May 2012 and was sentenced to life imprisonment. His parents, Anita Turner and Lee Turner, were also imprisoned. They received 27 months for misleading the police about the incident and destroying a confession note written by their son. As it was a homicide investigation, the police retained her body, and it was not until September that she could be brought home, but in a closed casket. The Turner couple was released in 2013. That same year, Turner's appeal for a reduced sentence was denied. However, at hearings in the High Court of London, British judges ruled otherwise. It's clear that, over some time, due to wounded pride, he harbored thoughts of ending her life, culminating in her demise. Lord Chief Justice Royce and Justice Globe stated in their verdict. Simon Jones, one of the successful prosecutors, stated after the sentence that Emily's death was a case of domestic violence. Upon hearing his sentence, Elliot said, "I never wanted to hurt her. I was just defending myself." Emily Longley's perpetrator, Elliot Turner, is currently serving a life sentence in a Kent prison for the brutal ending of the young aspiring model's life. The court ruled that he would not be eligible for parole for at least 16 years. Despite being incarcerated, the Daily Star reports that Turner has decorated the walls of his prison cell with photos of Emily, indicating a disturbing and potentially obsessive connection with his victim. Remarkably, while behind bars, Turner has reportedly spoken about his anticipation of the day he will be released, expressing a desire to return to a life of champagne, Bentleys, and birds. Such an attitude raises concerns about his lack of remorse and the potential for continuing harmful behavior after release. Furthermore, the involvement of Elliot's parents, Lee and Anita Turner, in perverting justice by destroying their son's confession letter and tampering with evidence from the crime scene led to their own imprisonment. This underscores the gravity of the case and the collective impact of the Turner family's actions on the pursuit of justice for Emily Longley. After the dust of the trial settled, Emily's father began to delve into domestic violence, studying patterns and behaviors. He painted a portrait of Elliot as an abuser who constantly thought about ending her life. It was only a matter of time. To love someone is not to try to control their life, not to call someone derogatory names, and not to isolate them from their friends. That's not love. A woman is treated like a trophy. Such relationships are solely about the man. From Emily's father's memories, he was cruel to Emily before she returned to New Zealand, but she didn't tell us anything. I don't know why, but now things could have been different if she had. Now, I don't think about Turner or his family. He's in prison, and I hope he suffers every day. If I dwell too much on what he did, the anger rises, and it's the kind of anger that can consume you. He never considered the people who for 17 years loved, cherished, and raised Emily. He stood behind her, wrapped his arms around her neck, and ended her life. Even now, years later, it's still hard to believe someone could do this to Emily. After enduring the tragedy, Emily's parents divorced. But to this day, all anniversaries and birthdays are very hard for them. Easter is especially difficult because it was the last time the family spent together. On May 6, 2011, Emily was still alive. She was chatting on Facebook with her father just a few hours before it happened. She seemed normal, happy, without the slightest hint of fear. On May 7, everything changed. A phone call woke Emily's father. He didn't answer right away. By the time he fully woke up, he had several missed calls from his ex-wife Caroline and multiple messages from her on his cell phone. Texts from her weren't unusual, but the volume of calls and messages was alarming. Finally, he answered an incoming call. It was his younger daughter, Hannah, crying inconsolably on the other end. In the background, he heard his ex-wife screaming, "Emily is gone! Emily is gone!" He sat on the same couch Emily had sat on just a week ago and broke down. What was she planning to do after college? This couldn't be true. How could the girl who was so full of life now be gone? He couldn't remember anything more about that night. Emily's father didn't sleep until he boarded the plane to England. From Emily's father's recollections, I remember being driven to Auckland, stopping in a small town to refuel and seeing Emily's photo on the front page of the Herald. I thought I was going to be sick right there in the station reading the headline. At the airport, people were throwing their copies in the trash, and I wanted to tell them who she was, that they should keep that newspaper. It seemed like an eternity before Mark Longley arrived in England. He was still in shock and couldn't believe the reason for his visit to his once beloved England was to identify his beloved daughter, Emily. He still hoped there had been some mistake. They took him straight to the morgue where Emily's body was. He stood in a room with Caroline, a police officer, and the mortician, who pointed to a window and said the body was in the next room. The mortician pointed to the window, the light would turn on, and when they were ready, they could enter the room. The light came on. Mark and Caroline, with hands cold from horror, stood unable to cross the threshold of that room. They were ready to scream that it wasn't their daughter, but it was her, their Emily. She was lying on the gurney, covered with a purple sheet, looking as if she were sleeping. Her father approached and touched her face. It had a beautiful alabaster hue, and her skin was smooth but icy cold. From Emily's father's memories, I wanted to run away and pretend I hadn't seen it, but I stood there holding her hand, looking at the face I had gazed at so intently when she was born. Except now her eyes were closed, and I realized this wasn't a joke. She wasn't going to sit up and say, "Boo." Emily, my daughter, was gone. In moments of such horror, all tomorrows become yesterdays. It's when a flood of emotions crashes down, bombarding and overwhelming the soul, that you realize your utter helplessness. That day in the morgue was the last time her parents saw their Emily. The pain of losing someone doesn't get easier. Time doesn't heal. It merely teaches you to live with it. Everyone always commented and still speaks of how beautiful Emily was. She had a wonderful, warm, and loving side to her nature. She would come up to you, wrap you in her long arms, and hug you tightly. But most of all, her family misses the woman Emily could have become. They will never get to see how her life would have unfolded, a life that was denied to her. Now, years later, Emily's father has remarried. He has a wonderful wife, Hillary, and a beautiful son, Hunter, is growing up in their family. Emily's younger sister, Hannah, has graduated from university and set up her own life, one where domestic violence has no place. Their greatest regret is that their Emily is not here to share the joyful moments with them. Thanks for watching. It would be great if you support the video by giving it a like. Subscribe to the channel. There are many shocking stories ahead.